All right, good morning, everyone, and thank you for the council members of getting here. Hopefully, the other Ben will make it soon. I know Tom and Jody are doing interviews for the potential new person at the GLC. Ben and I have been working with Greg somewhat, and definitely Jennifer. And for those of you who may not know it, I don't know if Kathy, I know, seen it a long time ago. But anyway, Greg's been helping us for a long time on financial. He helped put our bonds together that we did for the jail. We've done them for the fairgrounds. We've done them for other things. Back when I was on the council, that's when he had hair still. So anyway, I always feel it's great to have a different set of eyes, look at what's coming. We know that Senate Bill 1 is throwing some curves at us, some other things. We've talked the potential juvenile detention facility. That's where we really brought him back in. You know, now because of Senate Bill 1, I know it's costing us $1 million a year to house these youth, but you know, we still have to figure out can we not do it and such. So anyway, Greg, I will turn it over to you. I know we had a pretty interesting discussion the other day, so how about it? There's a little button you need to push on the front of that. Okay. The little red light, come on, there you go.
The one that has the face. So, good morning, and thank you for having me. And I want to kind of go over, we've got a package for you, and you should all have a copy of it. And then we're presenting up on the screens. And so this is, I'm not used to this many screens. And so like to kind of go over the impact of the new legislation, Senate Bill 1, also part of it is addressed in the DLGF bill. That kind of changed a few things. So sometimes you have to read Senate Bill 1, then you have to read 1427, I believe, and you have to match them up because there was some corrections in the DLGF bill to Senate Bill 1. And so it's still, believe it or not, being kind of looked at, clarified. There is probably several corrections that will come to a theater near you, okay? I specifically have met with Representative Thompson. I like to kid everybody, and I called Representative Thompson about having lunch and kind of talking over Senate Bill 1 and where we were proceeding with some of the projects in Indiana. And most notably, I mentioned Tippecanoe County and what we were trying to do with the juvenile. Hendricks County, we're trying to build a $50 million extension to Ronald Reagan Parkway. Monroe County is looking at a $200 million Justice Center removing it from downtown and undoing all that. And Senate Bill 1 kind of became a huge challenge. So I met with Representative Thompson to kind of do a one-on-one. It was kind of funny. I said, you want to eat at Emmy's in Avon? He said, where is it? I said, it's next to Rural King. He said, yeah, I'll meet you at the popcorn machine at Rural King. And so if you want to meet Representative Thompson, just hang out at Rural King. He loves that place. And so we met there for lunch or met there for popcorn, and then we went a block away or half a block away and had lunch. So the answer is there are some things that need corrected. There's no doubt about it. For instance, the fact that all of these things that I'm going to go over, number one, the fact that budgets and financing will require lit stability. What do I mean by that? Well, in order for a county such as Hendricks to build the $50 million extension on Ronald Reagan Parkway, which we've been intending to use, basically seed it, and this applies to you, right, with the juvenile center, that what we'll do is go to the rating agency and say, look, what we're going to do is use seed it for the next 2 years. Okay, the first question that's going to come back from the analyst is, well, what are you going to do after that? Well, we're going to use part of our new lit, our 1.2. Okay? And, okay, how's that going to work out? Well, let me show you. Okay? And what FSG Corp and we're doing is updating, and what we've done here in Tippecanoe County is update our sustainability and show 27, 28, and 29. So that not only to the rating agency, but also to the investors in the bond that would maybe pick up the document, we've got to give them a pathway. And we've got to tell them the pathway has, sure, maybe a few challenges in it, but we also believe the roadmap is spelled out, not only for the next 2 years, but what happens when this county council, along with obviously support by the commissioners, enact the new 1.2% LIT rate that I'm going to go through in this document also. So if you were to move ahead on any type of project being financed from seed it, edit, whatever you want to call it, from any income tax, the stability is what I tried to give Representative Thompson guidance on. And what also do I mean by that? Well, you also should be aware that Senate Bill 1 requires in 2028, once you start enacting the LIT, and Lisa, stop me if you have a question.
Yeah, you're
Go
going
ahead.
a little, you're up here and I'm still down here. So what is this 1.2% LIT? Let's
Okay.
start with that.
Well, okay, then let's jump down to in the future.
Yes.
Okay? In the future, the county will get a 1.2 maximum rate to fund county services.
That's in addition to what we already are charging for lit.
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay.
So let's go to page 12.
So I have not seen this before, by the way, just,
Oh, okay, so this
didn't
is
know.
all Greek to you.
I mean, I've talked to people, but yes, I have not gone through this particular packet.
Okay.
I've never seen this packet.
Sure, you haven't gone through this, yeah, because we just put it together. But if you go to page 12 and you look at the very last page, right, what Tippecanoe County has right now, if you look at the county share 2025 down there, you have CAGIT, you have PS Lit, you have Edit. That is the three basically LITs you have. What will happen in the future, all of those will go away in 2027, okay? And you'll get a new rate for 2028, okay? And so that's kind of spelled out on page 1, okay? So on page 1, all of those old income taxes in Tippecanoe County, please, this is addressing Tippecanoe County. This is not addressing 91 other counties. Everybody is a little different, okay? So here, what you see is in 26 and 27, assuming no change, although we did show a correctional facility of 0.10, okay? But in all practical purposes, everything gets eliminated in 2028, other than you're up to 1.2 million, or 1.2%, okay?
Okay, thank you. That
So
helps.
that then, going back to page 12, you might say, well, how will that fund the operations that we're currently having? Okay? Back on page 12, what we've done is kind of gone out on the limb and said the estimated max future lit of 1.2%, if you notice that, would bring in roughly 70 million per year. That's given the current adjusted gross income in Tippecanoe County at this point. So obviously subject to all kinds of changes in the future. where do we end up to the far right if we need to fund the 29 million and break even? We would end at 0.5% or 0.50. So 1.2's up here, break even's halfway. What do you do in between? That's going to be your decisions as you go forward.
So theoretically, it doesn't have to be 0.5%, but that's what would be if we wanted to have the same amount of funding as we have currently, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And remember, we're springboarding that to approvals during July of '27, and we're enacting in '28. So this is where we stand at this point. Okay? Keep in mind also that we need the state of Indiana to basically come up with the adjusted gross income in West Lafayette and Lafayette, because if we go back to the very first page, okay, in the future, they fall under the basically the right to be able to do their own, number two, their own 1.2%. Now, go ahead.
I'm on there. So the 1.2% or whatever lit we decide is only going to apply to the income as calculated by the state of the non-Lafayette, West Lafayette part of Tippecanoe County. Is that correct? No.
On the county's
It's the whole
1.2,
thing.
it's the county as a whole.
Okay. So as a resident of West Lafayette, I would be getting taxed a county lit rate, and then on top of that, I could get a West Lafayette city lit.
Exactly.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? And stay tuned. There may be more. Okay, so if you look in the future, the county council will approve all rates except large city rates. So West Lafayette and Lafayette are considered the large cities. What do I define as all large cities? Anything over 3,500 in population. And Jennifer, you and I coordinated yesterday, there isn't anybody else that we can come up with in the county. If we had a unit of government 5,000, they could react the same way as West Lafayette. They could have a rate themselves. Okay, but we don't.
So like Wabash Township, it does not apply to Wabash?
No. So let's go to 2A and 2B, and you can see they have their own rates. Okay? 2A, we can have a fire and EMS tax rate for territories and districts and possibly townships up to 0.40, and that is basically for fire and EMS. People call it public safety. It's not that broad, okay? Public safety rate that we have into place now, okay, does help police officers. What do I believe will happen? I think this may get expanded. But let me also give you the theoretical problem that has developed with the 1.2 at the city level and the 1.2 at the county level, i.e. Monroe County. Monroe County is going to make out really well. Bloomington at this point in time, who sets, just like here, remember we have what they call a phantom income tax board, and you know what that is, right? He who has the Tippecanoe and in Monroe County. Bloomington drives the number. Mm-hmm. They've done all the approvals to bring in the most money for them. Now with this, the 1.2 is not going to help them. They're actually going to have a loss. Now, why do I even bring this up to you? Because there's going to be changes coming. And one of the changes a lot of cities are fighting for at this point in time is maybe our rate needs to be 1.5, 1.5. And maybe somebody else needs to be lower, like the county. You can't let that happen. We can't let that happen. And that's what I meant by number one, the stability going forward is so important, okay? Because you're setting the 26 budget And basically, we're setting the course after that in the sustainability based upon the rules of the ballgame today.
I'm sorry, I am not following you.
Okay.
So right now, we set the lit rate.
The county sets the
Well,
county one, the city
board-
sets their city.
Right, yeah, it's actually, the cities are involved, but that's fine for Tippecanoe County. But you're saying in the future, we're going to say, I don't understand. Could West Lafayette and Tippecanoe County have different lit rates?
At this point in time, they could, up to 1.2.
Okay. So if we're at 1 and West Lafayette wants to be at 1.2, there's no problem with that? Or you're saying there is because they're
No,
different?
not under current rules. What I'm saying is, if the cities lobby the state and says the 1.2 won't work for us,
Okay.
we need it to be 1.5, the answer is going to be, well, who are we going to take it from, maybe? Now, the reason we can't, remember, all of these numbers were passed based upon no fencing of West Lafayette's income. They call it virtual fencing, right? We've been virtual fencing in Hamilton County for about 2 or 3 years. They have a virtual fence around.
You say virtual fencing, it's an estimate of what the income is in West Lafayette?
Correct, by the
Okay.
Indiana Department of Revenue.
Okay.
So they went to Fishers, they've got them all split, and they're using those. So 2 counties out of all the 92, and it may be 3 counties now, they have virtually fenced the municipalities, and they know the numbers. They don't have the foggiest here at this point.
They don't have
Okay?
the foggiest what?
Of the income in West Lafayette and Lafayette.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these are the numbers and the parameters, to me, that have been set in somewhat isolation.
So so maybe what I don't understand is there a limited pool and we're dividing it up between the city and county? Why does it matter if I can do 1% here and West Lafayette is at 1.2? Why do they, what does that
Well,
matter?
go to number 4, the maximum set for all rates is 2.9.
Okay.
Total 3%, max rate 2.9
For any individual in the county?
in total,
Okay.
yes.
So
Yes.
we could do 1.2, West Lafayette could do 1.2, and we'd be fine because it'd still be below 2.9.
Yes, but you
Okay.
have not helped small towns, you have not helped fire and EMS, and non-municipal libraries,
Okay, so we've not added all that on to
No.
it? Okay.
okay? So when does this have to be thought about? Number 1, it has to be thought about right now for doing anything, with the juvenile center or anything else, any planning. And with, quite frankly, your budget of 2026, you need to take this into account. And where will this go best at this point in time? The county looks fine. We're not going to worry about any of the other entities until they come asking. When do you have to start working on all this? January, February of 2027. You have to start talking about what the rates are going to be, and you got to be done by July of 2027. If anybody noticed, that's only 2 years away, and that'll blink, right? So it's awful important because everything has to be put together and ready to go to collect income taxes in 2028. And, we get it done in July, August, so that it's collected January of 2028, and we lose no revenue. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay.
Greg, could I point out here the
Please.
spreadsheet that I had sent that shows the rates by entity currently? So when Greg says a
Yeah.
0.5% for Tippecanoe County, that would be the equivalent of the same revenue that we're getting right now. For the 2 cities highlighted here, those would be the rates that are equivalent for them. So right now, we have a total of 1.28, and this is the distribution of that rate across the different entities.
Yeah, and keep in mind, on page 2, we show where Tippecanoe County lies with all the other 92 counties. Okay? And Tippecanoe County, I've been around a long time here. You've been really, really conservative, council has. And all in all, the income tax council has been very, very conservative. If you notice, you're at the bottom of the list, okay? So you're down there in the lower percentile of Indiana County tax rates that are effective this year in 2025. Now, here's the other concern that I brought up to Representative Thompson. Think about that 2.9% limit and look at some of these counties. If you scroll down, look at number 1, Randolph at, 3%. What are you going to do if you start above the maximum at this point in time? No one knows. It's going to be fun.
And they have all these property, and they're going to be getting a lot less in property taxes now, so.
Right. And
they have a
that's where I'm
huge
going
deficit
next.
to make up.
Yeah. So now keep in mind, there are also things, and I'm going to introduce this concept to you, and Doug kind of knows this one, but there's Title VI income taxes and Title VII income taxes in the state law. Remember, I'm a CPA. I'm your independent financial advisor that's registered by the Securities and Exchange Commission, have 2 licenses. I'm not an attorney, okay? But basically Title VII income taxes, there's about 10 or 12 counties that have the right. In other words, let me give you the weirdest one. In Hancock County, the libraries are funded by a seated rate. Only one in the state of Indiana, okay? So they collect income taxes and they get no property taxes. They run the library system in Hancock County. That was set up 10 years ago. That's a Title VII, a special income tax, okay? There are, of these counties, there are special income taxes. So you got to be careful again. That's why I said this presentation is Tippecanoe County. This is not anybody else. But I'm trying to tell you that if you get in your car and you go to a Lake County seminar and you hear what other counties are doing, it may not be applicable to you. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So let's talk about now the AV. Well, Jennifer, is the AV doing anything other than go down? You think it's going to go up?
For us, it's going up for 26.
For gross? What about net?
Don't know that yet.
Yeah. So let's go into net, okay? So what we see going forward is number 3, assessed value will decrease for homesteads. So on page 6, we know pretty certain what's going to happen is, this is an example of $250,000 on page 6. We know for certain that the standard deduction is going down, that second line on page 6. We know the homestead, the supplemental homestead is going up. And what do we know? We know that basically most of the homestead are trending down from 4% to 8% per year. Now, that's assuming this $250 million or $250,000 home gross AV doesn't change, which what you just said now and we're seeing is there will be your gross value of your home will most likely go up 3-4% due to trending and those type of things. So at best, let's say the 250 goes up by 3 or 4%, and keep in mind in some places it's not going up at all. So at best, maybe we net out the 4% negative. Okay? So AV in that example would be 0. Okay, now let's talk about the next thing that's going to happen. Next thing that's going to happen is on page 7. The 2% bucket of property taxes, they're going to go down. The standard deduction is 6%. So what are we going to have? Gross AV same of $1 million. The assessed value is going to trend down 6% all the way down to 5% each and every year, out until 2031. Okay, so if gross AV of apartments and farmland doesn't go up, what's going to happen? We're going to lose 6% of AV. Farmland is not going up unless, because you've got that on your first page. Farmland was valued, 2120 for 26, and currently it's 2280. So Dave, good news, your farmland, unless the productivity allowance would go up, you're going down. Okay, so stay tuned for that. Now, what else is going to happen? Well, on page 8, now let's talk about business personal property. Anybody here own their own business? Okay. Do you file a personal property tax return? Not in your farm. Do you, Doug? Not anymore. Okay. And why? Because if you go to page 8, your basically taxable value has to be at $80,000, and if you use the true tax value factors and all that other stuff, and I'm going to show you those in a second, then you probably, like my business, like your business, like most of the small businesses, they aren't going to pay personal property anymore. Look at what happens in 27, $2 million. Guess what's going to happen to business personal property? It's going down. So assessed value of homesteads going down, assessed value of 2% property, assessed value of personal property is going down. What's left? Commercial buildings, 3% property, right? So what's going to happen? AV's going to drop. What happens to tax rate? It goes up, okay? So our tax rate that we have now in total in Tippecanoe County, the goal of the state legislature is basically a 3% tax rate in all counties. The AV will trend down, the tax rate will go up, everybody hits 3%, there's no more circuit breaker to be had if the tax rate is $3 or above. Guess what? There's a lot of counties, there's probably 10, 15 of them that are already there. Okay, Tippecanoe County, we're not. Lisa, question.
Say that again, so we charge 3%
$3.
on commercial property.
Yes, it's a 3% cap.
Right. Aren't we charging 3% currently? Is it
Yeah.
lower than that?
Yes.
Am I missing
What is
something?
our current combined tax rate? One something or?
Like it's one?
Yeah. Over 2, yeah. Right.
Okay. Okay.
So we're over the 1, we're over the 2, we're probably halfway to the 3, or I think it was 224 or something like that. And so we're on our way to 3%. With all these drops in AV, it will head to $3 in every county, maybe faster than you think. We're thinking on average 3 to 4 years, and you'll get to $3 because as AV drops everywhere, remember in the county, and in the county is considered West Lafayette as a whole. Okay, now what I also want to point out, it's on page 9. Has anybody ever seen a Form 103? Doug, maybe you have, and David, you have. And so this is the actual Form 103 for 2024. Why did I show you this? Because not only the $2 million has changed, But you heard the state say, oh, and by the way, that 30% minimum floor on personal property is gone for any new personal property coming after this year. Now, what does that mean? Turn to page 10 and circle page or line 53. That line 53 in new tax forms will be zero. There will be no 30% floor of the, so if you had $1 million of AV for personal property and your basically value of personal property, remember personal property 103 is self-assessed, right? The assessor didn't go out there and assess your personal property. You fill out this form as a taxpayer. And so 30% of that would mean you would never fall below $300,000. That's not true anymore. That AV is going down too. Okay? Now, what else have they done if you look at the next? Now, it won't go completely to zero, depending on where you were at on page 11. These are different pools for personal property. Again, I'm getting kind of deep here, but I think you got to know the personal property and it's going down. Okay, that's the key. And why is it going down? That floor's been eliminated. And if you look, most of the projects fall under pool 2. They have a minimum of 15%. So if you look at 40, 56, these are what we call the true tax value factors that are multiplied times the $1 million to give us what the value of true tax value of personal property is. This is what every business fills out, and this is what's going to go away for future. But Jennifer, the nightmare is going to be, it doesn't go away if it was pre-personal property. And, oh, by the way, if the personal property is in a TIF district, let's say we have one personal property person that files this over 2 million, okay, and they're in a TIF district. The line 53 does not go away. Imagine that. So we're going to sit there, and if you're in a TIF district, and it doesn't say if you're in a TIF district in Tippecanoe County does not have any personal property in a TIF district, right? You do? Okay. So you're not using it to make bond payments. We know that, right? And so it doesn't matter whether you're using it for a bond payment under today's rules. If it's in a TIF district, it doesn't get the 30% floor going forward. I don't know. I don't know if they're going to create 2 Form 103s, one in the TIF, one without a TIF. But that's the rule. Again, the whole point is, back to page 1, AV's going down. Tax rates going up. Circuit breaker, once you get to a $3 tax rate, the question is, oh my gosh, what do we do after we hit $3? No new money. You're out of money. You mean, wait a minute. So if we have an emergency and we have to raise property taxes for whatever reason, the answer is no, you can't. So that pot becomes not unlimited anymore. Guess what happens on the LIT? Capped at 1.2. You don't go over that. Okay, in today's rules of the ball game. So now you have a cap that I kept saying some way, shape, or form, the state is going to cancel the cap or have a cap on LIT. Now you have it. When you get 3% and you get to 1.2, you're out of money. I'm not sure I like out of money coming, or the possibility of that. Now, obviously, things look good if we're only at 50 basis points, we're not all the way, but when it comes to 2027, you're going to have a lot of decisions about what that LIT rate's going to be. Okay? Not only do you have to make in the future, not only do you have to make the decision for the county, you have to make the decision for the fire EMS, the non-municipal rate, and the small towns. So in Tippecanoe County, you've got to set a rate to supply Battleground or replace their LIT in the future, right? And so most of the councils I've been around saying, well, wait a minute here, why would we do that? Well, because you have to, right? And they'll petition you for it. So now notice that county may keep 75%. Like, holy smokes, where'd that come from? I'm on page, Jennifer, I'm on the very first page. So where did that come from? Well, the state obviously in their wisdom said, why would a county council, Kathy, why would you raise a tax rate outside of West Lafayette and Lafayette for Battleground if it was, you know, you were raising the tax in northern Tippecanoe County? Why would you raise it? You know, I don't really want to, right? But you've got to fund them. They don't want to go out of business. So the state said, if you do $1, we'll let you keep 75% of the dollar. And that'll go on top of the 1.2. Questions on that? I see you're puzzled, Lisa. Pardon me? Okay. So it was enticement for you to get to do it, and at this point in time, it's set at 75%, and the answer is, I suspect that'll change too. Okay? So I said 1.2, maybe there's a possibility of getting more than that in the future. Stay tuned, that would be under the small town rate. So again, a lot going on. Okay. Now, so kind of looking at number 8 on now at the very top, everybody said, wow, the state gave us a 4% growth quotient. And I said, something's wrong. They were too nice. I said that from the get-go. When I had lunch with Representative Thompson, I said, okay, point blank question. You were too nice. Why did we get a 4% growth quotient? We haven't really gotten that too much in the past, and you were way, way too nice. He's like, well, because we don't expect you to get 4%. It's like, huh? And so, you know, first thing I've heard out of all cities and counties, 4% growth quotient, let's give a 4% raise. Wrong. Okay, the answer is number 8. The growth quotient was granted at 4%. Expect revenue at best 2% more in property taxes to your maximum levy. Why am I saying that? Because, Jennifer, what are you going to get on your tax bill when you do all the calculations? You're going to get a credit, right? And you're going to get what? $300. Let's assume it's the lesser of 10% or $300. Let's assume you're paying $400, so you're going to get that would be 40, you got to be above 3,000 to get, a $300 credit. So you're going to get a $300 credit because the state granted it right as a credit to your tax bill. Now, Jennifer, when you get a break like that, what happens to the county? Do we lose $300?
You lose money,
right,
yes.
Right. This isn't a set you up question, but I like to interact with the audience. So that you'll get a credit of $300. So I said, okay, Representative Thompson, what are we supposed to do? It's lost revenue. Okay, it's lost revenue. So we're going to get $300 less because of this. He said, that's why we gave you the 4%. 2% was supposed to take up for the 3%, or the 300,000, sorry, the $300. the $300. The 2%, bringing the 4 down to 2, netting 2% out for the $300 was supposed to give you a growth rate or a growth quotient of 2%. So what have I told every county? Don't probably do payroll above 2% unless you're going to depend on your cash balance or your LIT. But you got to be careful because I suspect they have not announced the 27 growth factor, but I was told it would be 2%. Okay, they're capping that too. So if we get 2% next year in 26 and 2% in 27, and then we slide into LIT, we get real dependent on LIT. Okay, so the $300, I said, page 3, I said, what did you do? Is there anything that you did to make up for the fact that we're going to lose $300? And we ran the numbers, and Jennifer and I have talked about this. It may be 300 at max. It may be on average 200, I think, Jennifer, you came up with. We used a calculation of the 300, and it's in the packet here, but let me stay on this one page here, page 3. We believe that it's still going to be more lost revenue to the county. So I went to the legislature and I said, what did you allow us to do? Look at the very bottom of page 3. They created this thing where the county council, notice section 125, provide that the county council may adopt an ordinance to impose a lit rate. What are you going to do? You have the opportunity between now and October 1 to increase the lit. You don't need West Lafayette and Lafayette's approval. It's you. Okay? To raise the lit to give the taxpayer more credit on their tax bill. Notice I said more credit. Does that mean more revenue to the county? Absolutely not. Just means they pay less. So if you wanted to say, you know, the 300 for the state of Indiana, that wasn't enough. We really want to make it another 300. You can raise the lit another 300. Give them a break. We'll give you any more revenue. No, absolutely not. It's only a break. Okay? This, to me, was basically something they put in at 1159 to give the counties the option to give another credit, but it really does not, you can't give any more money to the schools, you can't make up for the $300 loss to the cities. It's not, there isn't anybody I know that's going to use this. It's kind of worthless. I thought what it really meant, and I was so convinced in my head, they allowed us to raise the LIT to replace the $300 in revenue loss to all of us. That would have been fabulous. That was not what they did. So it didn't work. Okay, now on page 5, so you're saying, well, what are we going to lose? Well, on page 5, if you look down there at the bottom, estimated 26 impact of 10% or 300, we expect lost revenue on the county share, which you're at 18.3. What that tells me is you've got a very low county tax rate, and I know that. We're at around 30 pennies. Jennifer, I've got the sustainability somewhere here, or somewhere around there. 28, 20. So you're very low portion of the total. I've got one county that's 40%. It's a rural county. But most of the Hancock, Hendricks, what I call the power counties with income, they're around this level. But it means about a $1.8 million additional, we call it circuit breaker and lost revenue. We keep just calling it circuit breaker because it's reduced revenue. But Representative Thompson says not circuit breaker, it's lost revenue. Okay, lost revenue. And so if you notice in 26, you have a very small circuit breaker in 25 of 1.2 million, which was only a 24% or $24,000 change, and look at 24, we went down. Now we're expecting that to be around $2 million. And so, or $3 million, a change of $2 million, and continue to climb. Overall circuit breaker and revenue loss. So when you do the 26 budget and you say 4% growth quotient is going to bring us in new money, total property taxes of $18 million, I'm going to say that sounds great. You're not going to recognize 18 million. You're going to recognize 16 or 15. Okay? So your budget that you're going to put into Gateway, again, kind of artificially high. Try to get your 4%. Try and make your ends meet. But you're not going, that's where we're taking into account in the sustainability. We showed the gross revenues. Jennifer's been working on the front part. We've been working on the back part. We almost got it done, Jennifer, and we'll have a copy for council. The sustainability analysis, remember, Tippecanoe County almost 15 years ago won an award from the Association of Indiana Counties for having a plan longer than 1 year. The sustainability was for 3 years, and we were looking out. And we won an award for that, and we've kind of maintained that between a group effort here since then. What has that kept showing us? It kept the number one thing out of the rating agency, okay, where's your plan for more than 1 year of budget? Because if you're flying your government by 1 year of the budget, you're basically running government wrong. Okay, you got to look out in the future. And that's where the 3 years looking out always come. So that's where we've got to be prepared. And Jennifer said, we backed it down from the 300 to the 250 here, Jennifer, and you think it may be even less. And what were you, about 1.4 million with 200?
On the properties less than 300,000, 191 to 200.
Okay. So on average throughout the county, do you believe it's 250 or 200? Could be around 250. And we won't really know for a few months yet. And so this is what we're trying to prepare you for. Again, has nothing to do with assessed value going down, has nothing to do with LIT going up, is isolated to the lost revenue, the $300 credit that the governor said everybody's going to get, and I'm going to get it one way or the other. And he did. Okay. Questions on that lost revenue? Now, down there in the future, number 5, the number one question we always had from a lot of people is, wait a minute, if AV goes down, if tax rate goes up, and I have a TIF district, what's that going to mean? Well, remember, commercial properties other than personal property really isn't changing. It's going to continue. This is a shift from residential to commercial, okay? That's what all this is going to do. The commercial tax bill is going to go up, okay? Because they're not at 3% yet. They're not at AV high yet. They're going to keep getting valuations that are higher in their AV for commercial entities, commercial industrial. And so what that's going to mean to a TIF district is AV is going up in the TIF district because of upgrades in the AV for the commercial building. Tax rate's going to go up. It's going to be a big windfall. No. There happens to be something in Senate Bill 1 covering number 5 that says the state of Indiana will neutralize the impact of the tax rate going up. How are they going to do that? Very carefully. And Jennifer, do we do yours, or do you have someone, do we do the counties?
I do the counties.
Okay. So you might want to consult with us on it as we develop this, because you're going to have a new form. Hancock County, Hendricks County, we do all those in conjunction with the auditor and things like, we're even running abatement calculations now because they've gotten so confusing. So if there's something like that you want to bounce off us, we're doing that in several counties. And so what's going to happen is that one little sentence says we're going to neutralize the effect. The expectation is the financial advisors will calculate it, will give it to the DLGF. If the DLGF doesn't agree with it, they'll mark it out and correct you or change you. And sounds like a little bit of a war probably developing, but stay tuned. They did say, if you have balance outstanding on your TIF district, we'll try and not make those go in default. So thank you.
So commercial properties outside the TIF will be paying more, though?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, commercial inside will pay more. Commercial outside will pay more. What will most likely happen to reduce? If you have a TIF district with 100 million in it and you have a base AV, which is where it started at the beginning, of 20 million, that 20 million will change to neutralize the effect of the tax rate. It'll probably go up, it'll probably change. Now, the example is what happens if you have a $100 million TIF district and you have zero base? Yeah, I don't know. They haven't answered that question yet. They don't know either. Okay?
So will the taxes change for the commercial property in the TIF district? Where it goes, I understand might change, whether it goes
Yes.
to the TIF.
Out of the TIF or in the TIF, most likely that commercial entity will pay more,
Pay more.
period.
Okay, thank you.
But keep in mind, government doesn't get a windfall from the TIF. So, okay. Budget number 6 is just in the future. Budget process will take more time starting in 2029. I mean, basically what the state is telling us now is each and every year you'll have to reauthorize the lit rate. I've called Representative Thompson out on this one, and I said, wait a minute here. If we do a seated bond today in Tippecanoe County for the juvenile detention center, and every year that reoffers itself, what happens if Kathy and enough of her compadres say, no, we're not going to raise the lit. We're not going to implement the lit. Could happen. We don't know where this is going. And I said, that's going to cause a problem the minute we rate bonds. Because if I'm an analyst in Chicago, I'm going to say, what's going to happen when they say no? There will probably be a legislative fix coming that says if there's debt outstanding, the LIT rate cannot be lower than the debt service. We want it at 125, but at least equal to the debt service of the bonds that are issued. This is very important if we are doing Ronald Reagan Parkway, or if you would choose to use seated, okay? That means that we can go to the rating agency and say, at least if they took away the whole 1.2, if the council decided they didn't want to levy it, I'm setting up worst case scenario, right? And let's say we wouldn't want to do that, then the answer is you wouldn't have money for operations, but at least you would have the debt covered. And we've got to have that maintained. Tippecanoe County has an awesome credit rating, and we've got to maintain that. I've been very vigilant about that over many, many years. So we need that to be kind of corrected, and if you've got to go back and revisit lit each and every year, the county council of the ones in the county council, and the city has to do the same. It's going to get one of those. Last year's rate for LIT was 0.90. This year's rate, it's 1%. Why are you doing that? There'll be public hearings on that, and specifically a public hearing on just the lit rate. And guess what else is coming? We're going back to the old advertising the tax rate. Okay? We used to, many, many years ago, have in our budget in Gateway the tax rate of, if we were setting it and we'd set it high, 50 pennies. 50 pennies we knew we weren't going to get to, right, council? And so we would ultimately drop that down to 30 pennies when we finally got our 1782 notice, our budget order, and that would be where we wanted to be and where we thought we would be, but we had to advertise 50 for something that went wrong. And believe me, over the last couple of years, remember, I've been doing this for at least a couple of years, okay? We've seen it happen. Anybody that had extra levy, that got peeled out one time in October or November after everybody approved budgets, and they lost that buffer in their maximum levy. There's stranger things that have happened. So we'll have to advertise that tax rate for property taxes for LIT each and every year and revisit it. And we'll have to have certain budget hearings on that too. But that didn't occur until 2029. The budget process for 2026 does not change at this point in time. Okay? So we're on the same timeline, we're on the same gateway, we're on the same whatever. Okay. So I put down here capital plan. So if we're going to set our 3-year course on our operations, we definitely need to set our course on the next 5 years of the capital improvement plan. I mean, I specifically went down to Monroe County and I was on CATS TV for over 2 hours talking about the possible $200 million Justice Center. I said, there's no way you can do it, under this legislation because there's a cap of 25%. So if we go all the way back to the back page, you cannot use more than 25% of your 29 million for any new debt. Now, Tate's with me here. He's one of our analysts that runs all kinds of numbers in the back. I think that rate was around 7 million we got for the 25% of the total? Yeah. Okay. So 7 million, that would take into account, in my opinion, the courthouse bonds that we currently have that we're levying about 3 million of seed for. And we had projected if we did the juvenile detention center, I think it was 1.7, right? That was fairgrounds bond. Okay, fairgrounds bond, and the new juvenile would be 3 million. So we just projected that would be 4.7. You're clearly under the 7 million. That's not a problem for you. For other counties, it is. In Monroe, it would take 50%. They understand that. And they're under, by the way, a court order on some of this. So we've gone to the state legislature and said that 25% is a problem, for capital projects going forth. That, by the way, 25% limit is only in effect for 2 years. And I'm really sorry, Kathy and Ben and all, there's so much in this bill that you have to be worried about. I've done this in some counties more than once, okay, explaining it. So it kind of sets the course. So where I'm going with this is we could do a seeded bond for the juvenile detention center. We would have our operations plan for the capital part. We would have our operations plan put together. We would have our 5-year capital improvement plan. I would know if there's anything else on your minds of capital improvements anytime after the juvenile detention center, which is so important, right? It's going to be the number one question is what's going to come up next, okay? We got to have that answer before it's asked. So assuming nothing else, then we would have that to fund the operations. It basically has to come out of the income tax too, okay? So, but there's that 25% for any debt right now in the next 2 years that we've got to be concerned with, and we're okay in this analysis that we've done at this point in time. So the capital improvement, let's go back to page 1.
Well, hang on a second, Greg.
Yeah, question.
Stay on this page right here. Theoretically, if the council decide to go to the max at 1.2, okay, it's basically $40 million more dollars.
Yes.
But, once again, we now have EMS, small towns, everybody else getting their hands in there for that $40 million.
Now, not for the 1.2, David. That would be added on to the 1.2.
So that'd be above and beyond that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You got to be concerned about the 2.9 for everything combined, right?
Right.
for the cities, that, and then the extra
Yeah.
small towns.
Even though as a CPA, I did the math and all the math numbers to the max came to 3, state said, yeah, well, we set an artificial limit of 2.9. Where'd you get it? Heavy calculation in the background. I don't know. Came out of the air. Okay, so, yes, so David, on page number 1, back to that, we said, if, as your independent financial advisor with a fiduciary duty to you and the taxpayer, no one else, what might we look at? Well, in 2025, we've got this 1.28 LIT rate. Again, the state set the county's rate at 1.2 after 28. They said most county, they said all, I'm going to be surprised. All counties will be below that 1.2. Everybody we've run at this point in time, you are, okay? You are. Keep in mind that you share even your current 1.28 with a lot of different entities, okay? Seated is broken up. So what we said is, okay, if we were coming here and saying one way to fund basically the juvenile detention center is we could set up the correctional facility tax. Did that in Hancock, did that in Hendricks. Monroe County has a juvenile LIT rate specifically for its juvenile center. And David, this is one of those ones we said subject to bond counsel or a independent where I think we were going to try and get a hold, if we move forward, we were going to get a hold with the bond counsel, make sure correctional facilities would include juvenile detention center, but we took it for granted and said, yeah, correctional facilities pretty broad. And so, one option would be we would raise 10 basis points. That, by the way, is totally collected by the county. That's why I chose it. It doesn't get shared with West Lafayette and Lafayette, and by the way, it doesn't need them to approve it. You currently have that authority, at least until 2028. Okay? So this is a way that we've thought about or talked about. Maybe we could have that in 26, 27, levy that. And then one other option we're looking at legislatively, it's going to take a legislative change. But remember I told you there's Title VI LITs and Title VII LITs, and there's about 12 or 15 special projects under the Title VII. Those were not eliminated. Those income taxes were not eliminated at this point. They either missed it or they wanted to keep their hands off. But for instance, the LIT that's being raised for libraries is in that. The LIT for, I believe, Monroe's juvenile is in that. So at this point in time, some of those may or may not be eliminated. But the answer is in the 26th session, you might say, we've got to build this. We want to do it. You could go ask for an LIT dedicated to this facility. Obviously, you'd have to have your legislators on board. Representative Thompson said, yeah, that's neither on the table or off the table at this point. But, so what did I just say?
And that's bricks and mortar, right?
No, not necessarily. David, it's however you would want to write it and propose it.
It's whatever the legislature passes.
Yes,
Okay, so.
I'm saying special dispensation.
To even run it, theoretically, if you worded it or something.
Pardon me?
Even to run it.
Yes. Matter of fact, Monroe's is for running it. Monroe's isn't for building it. We built it. Yeah, it's an operating juvenile lit. And actually, we're looking at adjusting it down because it's doing well. It's helped out a lot. And it's been in place for about 5 years and things like that. So, matter of fact, that may be the only one I know of in the state of Indiana. It's the only one that shows up in Title VII for juvenile. So what I said was between now And August 1, you may have to make a decision on your current LIT, if you want to change it, if you want to leave it alone, or I wouldn't recommend you decrease it, but obviously there's three ways you could go. And we suggest here, and why August 1, you have to give notice to the other taxing districts, West Lafayette and Lafayette, that you're going to change the LIT and what you're going to change and if it affects them or not. This one would not affect them. It would just affect the total rate. And so what did I do in 2028? Jennifer thought it'd be helpful for us to show all of those go away, and maybe not the correctional facility if that was a Title VI, or Title VII, sorry, but all of that is replaced by the 1.2, and that shows you the 1.2 has to fund all that other old buckets. Will it be set aside in other buckets? I don't know, no guidance has been given. So will it be set aside in the old seated budget so that the county commissioners, Tracy, can say, I want to build this, new road out here, from seated. I don't know if that fund will self-destruct as of the end of 27 or not. Have you heard, Jennifer?
I talked to Ryan Hoff about it, and he indicated that the funds don't go anywhere. There's no guidance on what you do with the 1.2. Do you put it into its own fund, or can you internally separate it by whatever allocation you want to and put in these new funds? But that's my concern.
What I'm worried about is we'll go back, 7 years again, and we'll create the LIT fund. Mm-hmm. Remember when we did that? Mm-hmm. We pulled out general fund, and we had 2 general funds, and that was a freaking nightmare, okay? A general fund funded by property taxes, a general fund funded by lit. If they go there, and we kept trying to explain to everybody, you got to combine them. It's like the NVH restricted and non-restricted, still stupid.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, just accounting nightmare. As accounting,
But even if they say you can dump it all into your general fund, how will this body decide how much commissioners can spend on
Bingo,
those projects?
4,000s will come back to the budget process.
Mm-hmm.
In the 4,000s, 1,000s are personal services, 2,000s, 3,000, 4,000 capital outlay. Most counties have 0 in that. They'll come back. We've been there, done that. Mm-hmm. You've even done that many times. So the interesting trail, the real critical question for you right now is, not that I'm trying to get an answer, but do you want to change your lit? And the theater is coming near you very quickly. You've got until October 1 to do all the approvals. August 1 was the notification. You've got 30 days for any review of any LIT ordinance by the DLGF before you're allowed to approve it. There's a timeline I could put together, but you'll need to start considering whether you want to do this or not, because you need to be done by October 1. If you're done after October 1, you could do it in November. It doesn't start until the following period, which is 6 months later. So that's why we wanted to put it on your radar screen and say, wow, it may be something that we really need to think about. And by the way, that's minor 0.10 on the average median household is the difference between 768 and 712. Not a lot. Okay, and the 1 basis points are one basis points on lit brings in how much, Tate? 585. Okay, so 5 million or 5? Okay. So, we would get that new money, and why did I pick 0.10? I picked it out of the sky, right? And so we need to decide what we might want to do in 26 and 27, then the whole theater changes. That's page 1. Okay, let's see what I haven't gone through. I think most of the pages I've gone through with you. And I think, Jennifer, what do you think I've missed at this point in time? Or what have been some of the questions that maybe we haven't, I've thrown a lot at you, I understand. Okay, and that was a crash course in 1 hour and 10 minutes. So let's pause and take questions.
So I'd like to make sure I understand this 2.9, maximum rate 2.9.
Okay, page 1.
Number 4, that is just what the county council will decide, right? How, so we can do 1.2 for us,
Yes.
0.4 for territories,
Yeah, look at
Yeah,
D,
yeah.
DA.
yeah.
Yep, you're
So-
with me.
So we need to figure out, if let's say we wanted to do 2.9, we would need to figure out how to divvy that up.
In 2027,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Yep.
And because so the amount that the cities do is completely separate and not related to that 2.9.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other than, so in DA, 40 basis points for territories and districts, not considering police yet. B, for a township library, 0.20, that's DB. 1.2 is C, you raise small towns up to 1.2, and so you take that and that totals 1.8. There's actually a limit on that too of 1.7, okay? So there's a sub-limit. So you might say, wait a minute, we're not going to do 40, 20, and 1.2. We're going to do something to keep it under the 1.7. That's limit number 1. Then if you said, no, we'll go 1.7, then you take the 1.7 plus the 1.2 for the county, you're now at the 2.9. So there's a couple ways to get there, Lisa, and you pointed it out very good.
My next question, and just, there is going to be a whole nother level of a system that's going to happen from tax collection, right? So
Property tax?
No, income tax
Okay.
collection. So I live in West Lafayette.
Okay.
Ben lives in Lafayette. He's going to pay one rate for his income tax. I'm going to pay a different rate for my state income tax.
Possibly, unless you both did the same rate, right?
Unless Lafayette and West Lafayette, yeah.
Yeah.
But chances are it's going to be, everyone's going to have a different,
Again, the virtual fence around Ben and the virtual fence around you,
yeah.
I would assume your income may be different. And so ultimately, when we build out that virtual fence, we'll get one pocket in West Lafayette, we'll get one pocket of income in Lafayette, they'll be
Right,
totally
for when
different.
when they do the revenue. But I'm saying, as an individual living in West Lafayette, I'm going to pay a different tax rate than Ben is living in Lafayette.
Yes. The cities got what they, according to Representative Thompson, what they've been wanting for 5 or 6 years, they got the right to. Now, they may not like this right, but they got the right. Yep.
Raises an interesting question, and maybe it's beyond what we want
No,
to do.
go for it.
But like as an employer, like I withhold, state stuff,
Yeah.
and like now I got to figure out which city each employee lives in, or?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, great, thanks.
So, and now you bring up the number one concept I'm dealing with around the donuts, the donut counties. Hendricks County, Hancock County. Hancock County, we're talking about a $1 billion new facility of some sort, but you know what that sort is. So first question on we have a abatement application that we put together for Hancock County. It's about, we wanted it to be 10 pages, 15 pages. It's about 7 pages. It now needs to be about 10 pages. It's going to ask, what are you going to, what is your level of salaries? And, oh, by the way, where are they going to live? Notice I didn't say work. Now, why does it matter? It matters where you pay, okay? We just heard, Ben lives in one place. Lisa lives in another place. It's going to matter. Now, what happens if Ben and Lisa live in a neighboring county, Putnam County, or one of the northern counties, Benton County, because it likes to be under a windmill? Okay, if you choose to live under a windmill in Benton County, but you work in Tippecanoe County, that doesn't count towards Tippecanoe County. So now, on our abatement application, we asked this many years ago, and everybody said, we don't know. And we asked how much of the workforce will live in Hancock County. We don't know. Well, make an estimate before we give you the abatement. Because if you're going to tell us 0, if you're going to tell us 100%, big deal. That's a big difference, okay? Because guess what? The rich and famous engineers go to Hamilton County, and they live in Hamilton County, and they drive down to Hancock County. Why? It's just, they like to be in Carmel, okay, or whatever. And so that's going to matter, okay? So everybody's like, well, we need to rethink our abatement. Sure you do. And, you don't need so much assessed value anymore, because what's going to happen? That's going to do nothing but go down, and your tax rate's going to hit $3, then it doesn't really matter. What matters is LIT growth. If you're going to sustain budgets after 2028, 29, 30, 31, 32 at a 4% growth quotient, where did I get that random? You need LIT income to grow at about 3 or 4% to offset the LIT rate, so you break even. Jobs matter, and where they live matters. Keep in mind, if they live in West Lafayette and Lafayette, from the county as a whole, you're okay. You still collect your income taxes. They didn't say just on the unincorporated part of the county, that wouldn't work, okay? And so, so that's where those type of things matter, okay? And important, as the county council always approves tax abatements. Have you had any this year?
Well, they have, but I was going to bring that up as a question with the personal property disappearing in a roundabout way. There's really not a reason for them to give abatements on personal property, is there?
Even before this, David, my point blank answer was, look at Form 103. It goes to the 30% floor in the 5th year. Don't give an abatement on personal property for longer than 5 years, right? Because it's going to go to the floor in the 5th year. So why would you ever give a 10-year abatement on personal property? You're just, it's at that, if you look at that pool 2 on the form, you're down to about 5% on the true tax value after the 30% is eliminated, okay? You're not going to have value in personal property. So, I say 0 to 5 years, and, I'm on page 11, goes down to 15% pretty quick. I'm personally, of the opinion it's 0 to 5, maybe it's 0.
Okay, so next question is crystal ball. We hear it every year. We have 2 townships trustees sitting here.
Oh, hi.
Is townships going to be basically put onto the county, or are they going to change them, or were you hearing anything different through your state senator or such, or?
Well, 2B says you will raise a maximum of 0.20 to help fund the townships and the libraries, okay? Exclusive of fire protection. So Washington Township in Avon, Indiana, really large fire department, right? So they're like, Representative Thompson, we need more than 0.20 to fund this. Oh my gosh, I'm on page 1, just with the breakdown, but go ahead.
Well, looking at ours, we're at
Yeah.
0.0218 for townships.
Yeah, now, keep in mind, that includes fire protection, right? Or an EMS? No, in that rate?
We don't receive any funding from, right now, we don't receive any public safety dollars.
Okay. So, guess what?
But you are getting fire dollars.
Yeah, you get it through
For property
we only get it
tax.
through the tradition, we only
Yes.
get certified shares.
Let me ask, you're not a fire territory, right? You're not a district. And you're a township provided fire. Okay, so you get that through the certified shares. That'll go away in 28, so we'll have to replace it. And the county council is the one that does that, you don't do that.
With a
So-
maximum of 0.05 per unit type.
.20.
That's the total, but it's 0.05 per unit type. So, for 0.05 for township, 0.05 for transit, 0.05 for library.
Oh, yeah, okay. And so the subcategory. So there's a dilemma coming there. What I believe is they're just charting the course for townships to go away. Because guess what's going to come next? Hypothetically, in my opinion, based upon lots of discussions. Tippecanoe County in about a year or two will see that 40 basis points and the law will come out and say, Tippecanoe County Council now is authorized to establish a fire district, maybe in the entire county, maybe in quadrants, but you now have the power to levy the lit, and you have to create a district, maybe by X year. So Tippecanoe County could become a fire district in total. It may come as a fire district in certain quadrants, and it will work with West Lafayette and Lafayette. But that's what's coming to a theater, I believe, near you. What does that mean? Okay, if you take the theory of a township, you don't have to do fire and EMS anymore. So you basically do your operations and poor relief, right? What's left?
Cemeteries, poor relief,
Yeah,
parks if you have them, which we don't have.
yeah, but that's operations and poor relief. So they've now figured out a way to get fire and EMS out of it. And now they work on the rest, I suspect. Okay, poor relief, they've always said, just turn it over to the county. That was in the Shepard-Kernan report, and, operations will, cemetery and all that. So that's, I think, real, that's already being addressed. Matter of fact, I met with fire chiefs in Hancock County, and I said, you better decide who you want to marry. Because when a district is mandated on you, you probably ought to be friends with who you're going to get married with. If you want to create quadrants. And it's not been said it has to be the county as a whole, but the county council or county commissioners will be responsible for the county as a whole if this happens. And like I said, it's not my thought. It's my thought about where ultimately this will end up, but it's being discussed.
Well, that's
Happy.
what I wanted to hear that.
Yeah.
To make sure.
Okay, next question. Remember, I'm here to help you, okay, and answer any of your questions. Do I expect corrections next year? Yes.
How about live in our county so we can get your income tax?
The problem is at about, about 10 of them I may ask for tax abatement and see where I can get the best deal. Like, by the way, this $1 billion project, we were like, so this is what they named their game and said, yeah. And they said, well, are you talking to others? We're not telling you that. But they were, 5 other counties. They're playing let's make a deal as fast as they can, And so, David, I'm willing to play let's make a deal.
We might have some township offices over here pretty soon, so.
You want that?
No. Especially with my back towards you, I'm not going to say yes. They took stupid off my forehead a long time ago.
No, I think the best thing about it is, and that's what I really wanted, I know Ben hasn't really listened to you before, and Lisa, this is about the first time with Craig?
Well, Ben has.
I have.
Well, in
No,
our
there's two
public.
Bens, we
in
got
our-
two Bens now.
Yeah.
We got,
Oh, hi.
we got another Ben. So
I thought you were,
I really wanted them to hear
newspaper.
this part. I mean, so I just really wanted to hear from you and such, and, you know, there is changing skies ahead of us. And I know Jennifer, from the time she's done, she may be gray by then, I don't know, so it's, who knows what's gonna happen. But I think they really had to hear that, and as you laid it out, we could potentially proceed with the juvenile facility, but it's a matter of the council feeling comfortable.
Couple paths. I don't think it's unachievable. I think you have to choose your path. Path may take a little bit of work, but you got to start now. If
And
you
Paul
want.
has been doing a great job on our capital plan of putting together, so,
Yep. So we need that as a formalized document that's shared by all. Did we ever do the minimum fund balance resolution? We have one of those, and that's critical. Your debt plan will kind of fall into if you choose to do any type of bonds. One thing I want council to really remember on the fairgrounds, we issued, I believe, a 20-year seated bond. Council said, Kathy, I think you were here, when you said, we want an off-ramp to be able to pay this off. And Ben, were you here? You kind of remember? I said, okay, great. Well, normal is 10 years. It's actually was set at 6 years. We got a fabulous interest rate on it, in the threes and things like that. And we got the off-ramp in 6 years. Guess what? Time flies when you're not having fun or when you're having fun. It flies no matter what. And so we're past that. That was 2018. We can pay that 12 million, I believe it is right now. We could pay that off. So one of the other options is we pay that off with our cash. We then did the bond, for under the new statute, or vice versa. We got a couple options there. But we do have that expiration is gone. We have the right to pay that bond off at any point in time. So that, again, was the thing that the council at that point in time wanted to see, because they were like, we might have a lot of edit. We might want to take advantage and pay it down or pay it off. If we paid it down, it has to be in reverse order. So that's what the ordinances always say. So you pay from the end and come down. So we could even structure the juvenile detention center around that. It's called around. So that, from a LIT standpoint, if we're using 1 million a year now for that, and that falls off or we pay it off early, we could wrap the juvenile detention center right behind it, not having as much of an impact on LIT, right? So as your independent financial advisor, that's what we would do if you started going down. We've got structuring flexibility, is what I'm saying. To also then make it more easy on us, or possibly easier on us when we get out there to the 28, 29, 30 level.
well, that's really kind of what we did. We paid off the courthouse bond
Yes.
and rolled the same payment into the fairgrounds bond.
We paid off the SIA, TIF bonds, courthouse bonds. I think we actually paid off the courthouse bonds twice, didn't we? One back, I
4 or 5
You know.
times for that building, who
yeah,
knows?
but those have worked very, very well. Jail paid off that first one, and then you re-offered. So,
Greg, can you, I'm not sure if I heard correctly, the
Sure.
correction facilities, the 0.1%, how much would that bring in? Was it 5 million, I thought I heard?
that's what I'm thinking.
Estimated, I mean,
Yeah.
just ballpark numbers, pie in the sky.
Yeah,
And those correctional
let's say
facilities,
3.5.
dollars could be used hypothetically, not just for the juvenile correction facility we're discussing, but also our own correctional facility.
Oh,
If
absolutely.
need be, if expenses or monies aren't where they need to be.
Well,
I'm thinking of options possibly.
okay, remember, this .10 for correctional facilities can be used for capital and operating. There was a little bit early on that wasn't the case, but it is the case now. Special legislation would be totally different. Okay? But assuming, Ben, again, I had said, assuming your bond counsel or your legal counsel believes juvenile detention center is correctional facility, and to me, it's just one for the kids and one for the adults,
Correct.
Yes.
Well-
So, and you need to think about it.
So in retrospect, 5 million, if you took 2 million to operate it, 2 million to pay on it, I mean, that's some way how it could work.
Yeah, backing into, the exact
And then once it's
numbers.
paid off, then you could bring it back down some just for operational.
Yep,
And operationally, there's some numbers out there that say it'll pay for itself.
Isn't it just good for 1 year?
right.
Yeah.
And, I'd like to, for the debt service and operations, if we want to go to another level, we put together a document that was 11 million, bond, maybe a year ago. We need to refresh that if you want to see that and tell you what it would take.
Yeah, it's up to around 21. So,
Yeah, and I've seen numbers for Operation 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, I
Right.
think. So those, but-
So what
But
I'm-
yeah, Ben, on the very last page 12, if you got 5.8 billion in income, you can move the decimal place.
Okay. But the fact that our current lit rate is low gives us some flexibility, some options.
The 1.28
From
again,
a
in
whole
my,
big picture
very low.
perspective is a
Yeah.
lot better than the other end of things.
yep,
But also doesn't mean we need to be willy-nilly with it and just,
right. But you also mentioned,
you never have, you
No.
never would be.
I'm trying to remember, Ben, if the last time I talked to you of something to where extra could go to the schools or something like that?
that's what we talked about initially with that homestead property tax.
The 300?
Yeah, that you clarified today that unfortunately, no, that would not be the case.
Yeah, we were hoping it was broader than that.
Yeah.
Okay.
The additional credit.
Because remember, the age-old from governmental units to the state legislature, if you take it away, please replace it. Replace it with something. We saw this light, we tried to open this tunnel as far as we could, and we were basically told, no. That's not how it worked. So the take away and replace was not, again, I've not seen anyone say any exception, and Mr. Thompson, Representative Thompson, by the way, he's made the offer that he would come up and talk to a county council or county commissioners in any county. We had him in Hendricks County, and he was there for about a half hour. Obviously, people voiced concerns going forward, but he's made that offer. But at this point in time, I think it's just a matter of what needs corrected. And Association of Counties, I don't think have come up with anything new, but everybody's rereading and triple reading and trying to figure out how to get, in Monroe County, we had a general obligation bond we issued with $3 million each and every year to address our capital. Why? Because the $3 million levy fell off. We were doing that. You can't do that anymore. You have to have basically a 5-year, 5.1, one is 1 month, 5.1 year maturity, and you can't go over approximately 6 million. So I call it 6 for 6. You can only do GO bonds now for 6 years for 6 million, and you can do those each and every year. So that's kind of how it kind of affects the capital improvement if we were going to do, I mean, there are people issuing bonds now, general obligation bonds, because the race to $3 for the tax rate is happening. Anything else?
Thank you very much. This has been helpful for me. And
Okay.
it gives me a lot to think about.
Well, thank you. Yeah, a lot. And so if you have a specific question, I would say, we write an email to Jennifer. Jennifer can get it to us. We can answer it, get it back to you, Jennifer, and then you can disseminate it from there. In the past, I've said, just email me directly, but I've got too many county councils that were trying to do that. It became overwhelming. So, that works out. And then Jennifer knows to carbon copy both myself and Charlie or Tate. We use just our first names for everything. So, anything else? If not, I'll turn it back over to you, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Greg. Hang in there. Thank you, council. I know we have 3 other members that didn't make it, so hopefully you can pass there's some extra copies or whatever you want. So thank you, everybody.
Yep, thank you.